And welcome back. I'm Marcus Peter. I'm joined by Dr. Anne Rathbone Bradley. She's Vice President of Academic Affairs for the Fund for American Studies. And she joins us to talk about the cost of living crisis, myths about the question, but also the realities of the situation. Anne, thank you very much for joining us. How are you?
I'm well. Thank you for having me.
Well, always a joy to reconnect with you and always a joy to be here at Acton University.
Yes, indeed.
I want to begin by asking you to just from an overarching perspective, everyone listening right now, the average American, is concerned about the cost of living in general. We are feeling that there is a bit of a stretch to the dollar, so to speak. But I don't know if a lot of people are thinking about all of these factors that go into what's happening and whether everything we are being told can be believed. So from that overarching perspective, just present to us what's going on.
Sure. This is so important, and I agree with you. It's on everybody's minds. It's very much motivating the political climate and the elections, et cetera. So I think it's so important to get to the heart of the matter and, not to sound like I'm punting, but I think that it's a mixed bag of success and failures. And where there are failures, I think we have to be really careful about the solutions that we agitate for because we don't want to create unintended consequences. So we don't want to make a bad thing worse. And so just to give you a general sense, when we look at things like look at wages, we see some periods of stagnation and some periods of progress. When we look at purchasing power, again, it depends on what your scope is, but over time, there's been a lot of really remarkable advances in abundance for ordinary people. So we're less concerned, right, with how many private jets Taylor Swift has. We're much more concerned with...
Is anyone concerned about that?
I don't know, but you know what I'm saying, right?
Yeah.
Like what the rich can consume. Ordinary, hardworking Americans, what are they seeing when they go to the grocery store? What are they seeing when they want to move to an apartment complex or in a new city, or they want to buy a house for the first time, et cetera? But also things like going to college. Whether you're a student, you're going to fund it yourself. Whether you're parents and you're thinking about that. A lot of things on everybody's mind. Here's the general kind of some highlights, I think, what I would point out. And when I show this data to my students, it's really remarkable because when we look at affordability over time for different goods and services, things like hospital costs, tuition at college, college textbooks, things like that are getting much more expensive relative to the baseline level of inflation over the past 25 years. When we look at things like toys, household goods, clothing, household furniture, laptops, TVs, cell phones. These things are getting so abundant that it's almost funny, right? It's like, you could put a TV in every room.
That's right.
And it's just much more affordable to do that.
Much larger, much higher definition. We become accustomed to the overabundance of technological luxury.
I couldn't agree more. I joke with my husband that, he never buys a new TV because he always waits because he says the technology gets better so fast that he's just always waiting. It's funny, right? But that's a good thing.
I do the exact same thing.
Must be a guy thing. Yeah, I'm I don't know if I could tell the difference between this TV and the old TV.
No, quite literally, you wait for the technology to advance, and the most recent advancement is now old, and it's priced way lower.
It's crazy. And I remember, by the way, buying my first TV in graduate school, and it was one of those tube TVs. It was not even, it was 25 years ago. And
yeah, you had to develop muscles just to...
I had to have friends help me, and then when it was time to donate the TV, Goodwill won't even take them. So why is that, right? That's great, and we should celebrate it, but you can't eat a TV for dinner.
Yeah.
And when you're sick, the TV doesn't make you better. And so this is a problem. And so one of the things I would say as a general rule of thumb, when we look at education, housing, daycare, healthcare, these are sectors where the government has historically been very involved, and it has become increasingly involved in a variety of ways. So one of the things I like to focus on, just as an example, is daycare, right? Now think about being, 25 years old. You've graduated from college. Maybe you have some debt. Maybe you get a good job and you have to move to a city where you have to pay the rent and you're thinking about starting a family and you look at the daycare costs. Washington, D.C., where I live in Virginia, but it's very close, highest daycare costs in the country, $24,000 a year. So this is a lot. And if you believe that these are so prohibitive that you're going to now delay childbirth, that is eroding the family. because of a price tag.
Yep.
And that price tag, and this is such a good example because it's what we're doing in daycare via increasing complex regulations is 100% unnecessary. So that's the tragedy, is it doesn't need to be this way. And so I think that we can make strides on things like daycare. We can lower daycare costs and one of the things that they're doing in Washington, D.C., as an example, is the D.C. government said that if you have a certain number of kids in your house, then you have to have an associate's degree. And if you're the director of the daycare, then you have to have a college education. And daycare is up to the age of 5. So we're not teaching them Greek and Latin, right? It's just absolutely absurd, and that drives up costs.
Yep.
You see this in housing. If you look, there's a really interesting study that came out, and it shows that if you want to build an apartment complex, so again, you're that young couple, you move to New York City or Chicago or wherever, and you need to find a place to live. And these are some of the most expensive cities to live in the world. And it looks now that the reason we have so few builds in some of these cities is because of the complex regulations and zoning laws that make it very expensive. So this paper showed that about 40% of the overall cost of the multifamily unit is tied up in the regulations. 40%. That is passed directly on to the renters through higher rent prices. And so, I mean, there is a solution to this, right? Which is like people can move. So if you can leave LA, you can leave San Francisco, and we are seeing that people do that. But I wish that wasn't the only option.
Yep.
And
especially since that presents further economic concerns about job availability.
Absolutely.
The reason people move to the larger areas is because that's where the jobs are.
Right. So some of the lowest rent in the country is in West Virginia. I think it's something like average is $700 a month, but you have to have a job there. So the good news is there's more remote options for people. So maybe there's a way for people to work this out. But I think what we really need to do is solve the problems in these cities, because you want to match the good jobs, the high paying jobs that people have worked so hard for. And you want there to be an ability for them to live and eat and grow their families and commute and all these types of things. And so I think it's really skewed, but it's very clear to me the reason why. When the government is overly involved, we tend to get these problems. And, when I talk about this with people, I say it can seem monumental. How are we going to fix housing, education, healthcare, daycare?
Yeah, because
food,
you think of them as large sectors.
Large sectors. And none of us, by the way, in the backdrop of all this is a growing national debt.
Yes.
Fueled by deficits and, of course, spending that doesn't match the revenue. So the macroeconomic context is not good.
Yep.
Because there's a debt and liability that are passing on to people who aren't even born yet.
Exactly.
So
as soon as they're
again,
born, they're inheriting quite a huge chunk that's actually growing in terms of ratio.
Yeah, and then the more debt you have, the more servicing you have to do. So that crowds out other spending priorities. So it's kind of like one of those snowballs that rolls downhill, and we have to stop the snowball. But the problem is, you, me, no individual family can change the debt. We can't even change the debt in a city by ourselves. So what do we do? How do we help people think through it? I think we have to think about chipping away at the iceberg. And when you have an ice pick and you're in front of a giant iceberg, it's like a David and Goliath kind of problem, right? You're like, I'm never going to do anything. And so I think we lose hope and we give up. And then I will say politically, when the left comes in and says, oh, well, don't worry, we know daycare. AOC made a statement something like, childhood is now a privilege.
Yep.
So therefore, we need free daycare.
Yep.
Her answer is free daycare. And I mean, part of what she's saying is not wrong. It's very expensive. Wealthy people can have as many children as they want. Unfortunately, they don't have as many. But if you're at the bottom of the income distribution, these are the people who are stressing out about daycare and things like this. And so I think we shouldn't get overwhelmed, but we also shouldn't give in to the left and say, let's just make it free. But again, if I'm that 25-year-old, like Mom Donnie was, providing or arguing for free bus rides. That sounds good to me. It's like one less thing, right? Yeah. So I think the thing is...
We're going to have to pause there.
Yes, please.
We have to take a break. We're going to continue on the other side. I'm talking with Dr. Anne Rathbone Bradley, Vice President of Academic Affairs at the Fund for American Studies. And we're talking effectively about the cost of living crisis. And she's touching on, effectively, the rising costs in a lot of major sectors. And one common thread is government involvement. We're going to continue on the other side. Stay tuned. I'm Marcus Peter. And we're back. Thank you very much for joining us. I'm talking with Dr. Anne Rathbone Bradley, Vice President of Academic Affairs for the Fund for American Studies. So, Anne, we got cut off by the break earlier, but I want to ask you to go right back into what you were saying, that if you are that 25-year-old, all of a sudden free bus rides and free daycare and free healthcare become really enticing simply because of what you're seeing in terms of the stretch of your income. One question that I know all of our viewers have is, how much of this is being exacerbated by the inflation to growth of income ratio?
Yeah, I mean, again, I think that's part of the macroeconomic context. It's in the background and is a problem. Inflation is pernicious because it affects the entire economy. Mm-hmm. And of course, inflation is regressive tax. So the very people we're worried about in terms of the affordability crisis, again, we're not worried about the super wealthy people. The very people we're worried about get kind of hobbled by inflation in a way that other people maybe don't. They don't like it, but they can overcome it. And so, I think that's part of the context here. And what I was saying, or we were talking about before, is I think it's easy to lose hope and just say, well, whatever, I'll just take the free bus ride because it sounds good. I don't want to pay for one more thing. Right. And so I think we really have to resist that. Now, I will say, none of us also can single-handedly change a regulation. Mm-hmm. I do think there's things we can do at a very local level to fight back against these regulations, to shine a light on them. And I think what we need to do is do it not in the name of economic efficiency, which again just sounds cold and boring and maybe even offensive.
And maybe even a little inhuman sometimes.
Inhuman, yeah. What we need to talk about is economic efficiency is important because of the people that it supports. Mm-hmm. So we need to put people at the front of our argument. We need to put the single mom who's doing her best. Maybe she's cleaning hotel rooms. She can't work from home. How do we help her get into that apartment? How do we, if she wants education, education costs are spiraling out of control. What if education is the difference for her from getting out of that line of work into another line of work? How do we help her transition? And so this is where the local community needs to have a real eye as to what are the local problems. And it could be regulations, occupational licensing, all this type of stuff that we see that's leading to these rising costs in these sectors, and then step in and help.
Yep.
I think that's the way we get people away from, well, the free stuff is just the answer.
Yeah.
Because the free stuff isn't free.
Exactly.
Right? And then the free stuff is going to just increase costs over time. And by then it's too late because the damage is already done.
And the structure's already in place.
Yeah. So we have to stop. And it's very hard to take free things, or what I'd like to say, zero price. It's not free, right? But it might have a zero price. It's hard to take those away from people, so we shouldn't give them in the first place. So again, AOC's answer to the daycare crisis, which she's right about, is have the government intervene, allocate who's going to get it, and have taxpayers fund it. But the very people you want to come and move to your city are taxpayers. So again, I think this disproportionately the burden falls on the poor. And so we say we want to help them, and we actually end up hurting them more. Yep. And then that begs for more government intervention and higher welfare standards and welfare interventions. And so, again, that snowball gets out of our grasp and rolls downhill and becomes a bigger problem.
The value of the dollar is an obvious concern, too, because with the exacerbating debt, one of the issues we're going to face is crowding out, and particularly dollars being circulated in the public sector, which sort of sounds all right until we realize that's being taken away from economic growth in the private sector,
right,
which is necessary.
Yep. So this is I've talked about a lot in economics. I think David Bahnsen gave a talk about it today. Yeah. I think we should talk more about government crowding out. And here's the reason, in a very kind of plain way, I guess, is that the government has the monopoly of force, right? It can tell us what to do, can make us do things. It can print money. We can't really do that much about it, right? Like we can advocate for this or that, et cetera. So in light of that, we really should be worried about inflation overall, but we, kind of to your question, and I think also to the point David makes, is that there's this kind of hidden thing that's going on, which is the more we have a weak dollar, the more we have debt servicing, then that money that could go to things we might agree on or productive aspects of government spending, and it gets crowded out. And so then you don't have reinvestment in the economy. He was talking today about how you lose innovation, you lose savings to build towards new innovative ideas in the future. And so you get retarded economic growth because of that. And again, economic growth doesn't sound like something many people want to talk about. The way I like to put that is we are advocating for a society with rich opportunities.
Yep.
We want people to be able to give things a try, and they become wealthy in those ventures when they are serving their fellow community members well. And who knows, all big businesses started out as small businesses. And I really think for most people, that's what they think about when they talk about the American dream. They talk about anybody from anywhere can have an idea, and we can put some real blood, sweat, and tears behind that idea, and we can make something.
Right.
And that innovation helps everybody. And so we don't want to lose that. But the more free stuff, even at the state level, right, but at the federal level too, combined with all the things we're talking about, inflationary pressures, crowding out, servicing the debt, this just slows down the economy. Now, a lot of people look at that and they say, well, it's no big deal.
Yeah.
We still get 2% growth rates a year. But I think what we have a hard time picturing is like what life would like if we had 4% growth rates. Right? So it's like it can be better. It could be more, we could have more income mobility. We could have more innovation and more entrepreneurship. And I think that's what we want. So I'm really worried about, and what I think about a lot is the economy. When I think about economic mobility, I think about a ladder. Right? You want to climb the ladder. Like my first job was at George Washington's house in Mount Vernon, and I worked in the gift shop when I was like 15. Oh. Yeah, it was great. And it was like me and the retired ladies. And my dad and my mom had to drop me off. I couldn't even drive, And I think back and I'm like, that was a great opportunity.
Yeah.
I didn't need the money. I wasn't helping my parents pay the mortgage, but it taught me innovation, or not innovation, but like hard work, showing up on time, personal responsibility,
creativity, ingenuity,
all that stuff. And I don't make whatever that wage was. I probably made $5 an hour. I don't make that anymore. No, I had to do a lot of investment, a lot of work, but that's what we want for everybody. We don't want you to have to start and finish in the same job if that's not what you want. So we want choices and options for people. And I think we need to reframe, economic growth and GDP and economic efficiency, which again, no one cares about, sounds inhuman. And we need to put the people first and say, like, what we want is for people who have been stuck in intergenerational poverty in different parts of the United States to be able to flee that. And it's because they've been unburdened by some of these things that weigh them down and actually trap them with bad incentives. Let's
and cyclical incentives.
Yes, let's take off the shackles. That's what we want.
So, if effectively what we're calling for is not just a notional concept of upward social mobility, we really are saying we want access to the opportunity, or greater access, more expansive access to the opportunity for upward social mobility. That's really what economic growth looks like.
I think so. And that's tied directly into the affordability crisis. Why do we care? We care because if the costs of goods and services are outpacing our wage and income gains, then we're losing.
Yep.
And so we need to think about economists don't just care about income growth for that reason, right? We care about real income growth relative to our purchasing power. And, we want an abundance economy, not because we're extolling the prosperity gospel, because, it eases people's lives and allows them to do more, not less, right?
Yep, because national prosperity and wealth are good things for the society as a whole.
Yeah. And again, I think it's this idea that, I don't know what Jeff Bezos' upbringing was like at all, but I look back at those pictures when he started this idea of Amazon, which, by the way, is very different than what it is. He thought it was going to be like an online bookstore. And you have this picture of him somewhere. I don't know if he's in a basement or wherever, but he has a banner and it's spray painted and says Amazon on it. So that was his logo back then. It's just like, I have an idea. I'm working in my parents' basement or wherever. He's a smart guy, educated guy, but the world didn't know him anything, and he could have failed. And look at Amazon today is very different than his vision. The entrepreneur himself didn't know. And I think that's what economics teaches us is humility. So even the entrepreneur who starts a company doesn't know where it will take him. And that's all going to be driven by the customers. And so I think we need a really adaptive, creative society. And so that's why we're so focused on the institutions that promote economic growth.
Yep.
Right? It's not because if I have another Lexus, I'm going to be happier. No, it's because all of us have human creativity. Human creativity is literally infinite.
Yeah.
But we want to remove the constraints to the unleashing of that creativity. That's the name of the game. I think if we reframe the growth conversation with that, we're leading with people first, I think we can get a lot more traction than we have.
I really appreciate the lexiconal lean you're bringing to this. Like you've rightly mentioned, it demechanizes the conversation, which I greatly appreciate. So we've got about a minute left in this segment. For all of our listeners right now, the average American, what can we do from where we are right now to start taking steps in the right direction?
Yeah. So it's a more important question. Again, don't feel like David and Goliath. You can't change the national debt by yourself. You probably can't even change the zoning requirements of house building in your city by yourself. But that part you can start to talk about. You can build a coalition. You can use that information about what is causing housing costs in your city to try to kind of figure out how we can charitably help people in those situations. So I think we can use the information to do better even at humanitarian aid in our communities. But what can we do personally? I think this is hard, and some of it sounds just so basic, but it's important. So I have a 16 and a 13-year-old, and we just felt like one of the things we owed them was kind of educating them on financial literacy. So, my son has a job now, he's 16, and, he wants to blow all of his money on like books and records, which is great. He's 16. I mean, part of the freedom of a job is the ability to do that. And
expendable income.
Yeah, and we're happy for him to do that, but we're trying to teach him how to save for the future.
Yeah.
We're trying to teach him now. We don't want you to go to a college that's going to put you in debt.
Yeah.
Our goal for you, if college is the right thing, is for you to come out debt-free. How can we help you, and how can you help yourself?
And thank you. I would continue with you
sorry.
forever. Thank you so much. My guest has been Dr. Anne Rathbone Bradley, Vice President of Academic Affairs for the Fund for American Studies. And she and I have been talking about the cost of living crisis, what are some of the myths involved, but also what the realities are and how you and I can start making very tangible, clear, concrete changes to take steps for the better. Stay tuned. I'm Marcus Peter.